like scary movies?
Uh-huh. I'm getting ready to watch a video.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Hi everybody, I'm George and welcome to the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made. According to our guest, at least. And today's guest is a cool local musician and filmmaker. You might have seen her breaking down a hidden gem or two online, and if you're lucky, you've seen her short film, The Pointy Slippers. Please welcome Christina Acevedo.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely my pleasure. You know, as the show comes to an end, I said I really want to make sure that I'm getting to spotlight some local Philadelphians and really support the Philadelphia scene. So I'm really thrilled to have you on and you know, even just watching your breakdowns of other horror movies and the trailers and stuff for your own work, even the special effects stuff, really, really impressive work. So definitely thrilled to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of your show. I listen to it religiously. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with horror?
Oh, gosh. Okay, it goes back so far. It started, I'm a Universal kid. I'm a Disney kid. So it started a long time ago when I would go to Universal Studios Orlando, Florida, of course.
Of course.
With my dad, who took me there multiple times a year. And so back in the day, in the 90s, I'm sure you've heard about this, and I'm sure your fans know about it too, are these Alfred Hitchcock experiences that they had there. They had these installations there. They also had a show for special effects makeup. And so you would wait in line as if you were waiting in line for a ride, and then you would just get to have these experiences. So I would go and I would watch, you know, the birds in 3D and learn about how they did the special effects for that, and then watch how did they film the shower scene in Psycho, and they would do a reenactment of that. So I was confused because I had no context, but I was also so fascinated and obsessed. I would go to these talks on the special effects makeup and see how they did the, you know, the werewolf and American Werewolf in Paris, and, you know, the Scarface and Exorcist, and like all these films that I really had never seen because I was way too young, but I was completely drawn to the blood and the monsters and everything.
You know, it's so funny you say that because I had a pretty similar experience at Universal where it's like, thinking back and I was like, oh yeah, Terminator 2 ride, I love it so much. And then you're like, I hadn't seen Terminator 2, what the hell am I talking about?
Or Aliens, the Aliens experience. Yeah. I think that was at Disney, I can't remember, but that was horrifying. And I definitely
the thing stabbed you in the back. I think it became like Lilo and Stitch themed, but it used to be Alien.
Yeah, everything now has turned, you know, into something more contemporary, but I remember it fondly. And then, you know, it just, the obsession just grew and grew and transitioned into a weird obsession with like haunting films, specifically children ghosts.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I had this obsession with like only films with ghosts with children, like Lady in White,
The Orphanage, a classic.
Yes, The Changeling.
Of course, yes, another classic.
Yeah, a lot of Are You Afraid of the Darks? So we were lucky. My generation was lucky.
So would you say that that's your favorite subgenre then? Does that still persist to this day, where you're like, oh, I love a haunting and a child haunting specifically?
Well, I think the haunting films do come close second to body horror. Body horror is number one.
Yeah, you know, it is kind of interesting that those are like the two extremes, I feel like, in terms of one is so physical, tangible, the like warping of your own physical self. And then the other is this supernatural experience that you're having that is completely intangible.
Yes.
It really does give you the full spectrum, I feel like, to be a fan of those two.
Yes, and fully relatable to both. I'm constantly wondering, you know, is my house haunted, and, you know, are there ghosts living here, and, you know, all that good stuff. I mean, we live in Philadelphia.
That's right. Plenty of spirits around.
Yes.
And speaking of, I'm going to throw a surprise question at you. I just saw Trap, so it's on my mind. Do you have a favorite movie that takes place in Philadelphia?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just watched Mannequin.
Oh, hell yeah. That's right.
And that was cool. It was screened outside. There was another film that I saw that I was surprised it was filmed in Philadelphia. And now I'm blanking, and I feel like I did just watch it. Ugh, it's escaping me.
While you think, I'll throw out there that, of course, Blowout is one of the all-time
That's what
classics.
I just saw. That's what I just saw on Criterion.
Oh, it's incredible. John Travolta at his peak, I would say. He's really, really great.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, one that's less appreciated, but still I'm a big fan of, Law Abiding Citizen, the Gerard Butler movie.
I haven't seen
that
one.
Fun. It's
okay, I gotta add these to the list because there's so many great locations to shoot in Philadelphia, and I'm really surprised that they haven't done more. And I'm always inspired anytime I go walking, thinking of different concepts and stories for films. But Mannequin, when they go into what was I think it was Wanamaker's, now it's Macy's, and that beautiful organ that's still there was somewhere my grandmother used to take me all the time as a kid. So that's why I feel I'm drawn to that film, because it's close to my heart.
Hell yeah. I actually used to work in the offices right above that Wanamaker building. So
you know it well.
Cool, beautiful spot, no doubt.
It really is.
But the movie we're talking about today is Body Melt, the Australian body horror classic. This is definitely one that has a cult following. It has sort of bubbled up naturally, found its own fan base. I'm curious if you remember how you came to it, if someone recommended it to you, or just in your digging for horror, sort of like, hey, this is one that sounds interesting.
I became obsessed with splatter films and body horror. I mean, I was always into Hellraiser, but when I was watching all the Hellraisers, I didn't recognize that could be potentially body horror. So anyway, I got super into splatter films during the pandemic. Shout out Cathode Cinema for all their good work they did for movie lovers like us when we were quarantined. And I was constantly sharing all the different films that I was watching in that genre because I became obsessed and thought they were glorious. And someone did refer Body Melt to me. And I have to admit that the first time I saw it, and it came from a person like who I value their opinion very highly of these kinds of films. And when I saw it for the first time, I didn't get sucked in. It didn't click for me. So then it wasn't until I saw it a second time that my mind was blown.
Yeah, it really is kind of an interesting movie because I feel like it subverts a lot of typical expectations of what people expect a horror movie, especially a horror movie of this time, to be doing in terms of the looseness of the narrative, the way that the story almost feels like it just very naturally flows from one story into the other the same way that the camera does. It's just really fascinating. But the conversation starts naturally with Phillip Brophy, the co-writer, director, musician on this. He did a ton of stuff for it and had become interested in horror during the boom of the early 80s. And thanks to the dawning of postmodernism, started writing about contemporary horror in art magazines. The lines had become blurred between high and low art, yes, but what he also found was that while artists like to slum it, so to speak, they also refused to fully embrace low art, he said, needing a place to retreat to. And I find this to be pretty interesting and fairly accurate when you see the reaction to some of the more extreme, not just gore, but even gags and out there concepts. There's a lot of people who say that they like, I can get down and dirty with it. And then as soon as something becomes a little extreme, they're saying, oh, well, not like that, though.
Yeah, he takes it there, like to the extreme. And I appreciate that. That's what makes a film good, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was enjoying writing about the movie industry from the outside. He said he wasn't really interested in becoming a part of it himself until the shift towards conservative culture also prompted a plateau in the opportunities for criticism. So he's feeling constricted by this, and he starts reconsidering the other side of things with a fresh eye and an eagerness to push the envelope, as we just alluded to. And this coincided with meeting Rod Bishop, someone he felt was a rare combo of, quote, knowing the industry but not being a dickhead, which I thought was a funny description. So in 1986, with Rod producing and Phillip directing, they made a 16mm, nearly hour-long short film called Salt, Saliva, Sperm, and Sweat, which I watched not even a half hour ago. I finished watching this short film. And I really thought that it was interesting, I Phillip is a musician as well, like we said. And one thing that struck me as being similar to your own work is that emphasis on sound design. Even just if people watch the trailer for The Pointy Slippers, I think it becomes very clear that sound design is a huge part of your work. And in Salt, Saliva, Sperm, and Sweat, there's so much emphasis on the body being a muscle and being this sort of unthinking, alive thing that is based purely on instinct. And the way that he communicates that is very much by emphasizing the sounds that bodies make and the way that we react to them. It's not just in that, though. Even in the commentary for this movie, he talked about the way that sound primes you for the visuals that you're about to see. And so I find it pretty interesting for him to approach it from such a sound design forward perspective, not just the short film, but everything.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful thing. It makes the film so well-rounded, and it reminds me, not to be cliche, but Lynch kept coming up for me while I was watching the film and researching this film. They're similar in ways that they're both come from this artist background, and they are artists.
Yeah.
And the soundscapes that they use are so textured and so much attention to detail and done in these non-traditional ways, which I think is what you alluded to, in a way where Brophy was almost in conflict with these traditional ways of filmmaking. And why does the sound have to come in here? Why does it have to be this way, that way? And people are so used to doing things a certain way. And it's hard as an artist coming up against those limits. In a way, you have to really push to get, your artistic vision there. And that's why this film is so fun to watch, because it's just so him, every part of it.
Absolutely. And I think that it says a lot that he talks about these movies as not being deluded necessarily about their chances at mainstream success, but considering it to be like an essay on the merging of sex and violence, and using it as an artistic expression, more as like a vehicle to, find fame or whatever, in the way that he felt a lot of the other people, a lot of his contemporaries were. It did garner pretty positive reception, though, winning at the Melbourne International Film Festival, and they wanted to continue down that path, with the genesis for Body Melt being quite literally, what would be fantastic to see happen to a body?
Yeah, I heard he was watching television and he just thought to himself, what would happen if these people in the TV just started melting?
Right.
And there's the idea is born. I mean, it's amazing.
It really is, yeah. Phillip came up with a few ideas like the placenta drop, somebody drowning in their own phlegm, and a rib being pulled out, then crafted a loose story about each. He said, quote, "It was written in the freeform association way of looking at beautiful ads on TV and just wishing that the world of most of these ads depict would explode and cave in. In a nutshell, it's the Brady Bunch in hell, the suburb on weird drugs, and the apocalypse next door."
Yeah, and again, don't be annoyed with me, but Twin Peaks, I mean, this is the body horror Twin Peaks movie edition.
Yeah. Oh, and let me just get ahead of this and say, I will never be mad at talking about David Lynch.
It might come up a couple more times.
Good. I'm glad. But the Australian Film Commission refused to budge. They said not only were they not really interested in horror, but specifically they didn't want an anthology film, which I can relate to. Sorry, Phillip Brophy.
I didn't mind it so much, I think, because I love the interwoven storylines, but it is complicated because there is, some storylines I like over others, and that kind of takes you out of the film experience of getting lost in the film when you have the different storylines, and if they don't really connect, and you can just tell they're kind of forced to be placed with one another, and it's not an episodic,
But that's the thing, though, is that it does feel like because I felt similarly, and then as I watch it over and over again, like you said, it does connect more and more, where you sort of just accept the way that it is that loosey-goosey kind of feel, and even if you are a bigger fan of one storyline over another, it does feel like, well, we're sliding back and forth, baby. This is the way it goes. And so for me, at least, it does work better with every rewatch in terms of the ones that I maybe connected with a little less grow on me and I see things that I didn't in them before, while the allure of the ones I already connected with, I'm like, oh, great, I can't wait to revisit those sections and have them be like dropped in.
Yes, but I agree with you. It would have, I don't think it would have been as exciting if it was an anthology, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Phillip described the Australian Film Commission as an attempt to fuse industry with culture, but, quote, the kinds of film this body wants to make are respectable, sensitive, socially aware, politically correct, and uniquely Australian. This, in most cases, means they support totally boring films. And so, despite the challenges and fluctuating levels of will to go on, the movie finally got greenlit by merging the stories through the framework of The Detective and Vimuville, thanks in part to Rod Bishop coming on as co-writer to help with the finer points of plot, something Phillip was admittedly not very interested in, saying in the commentary that his natural inclination was not to give a shit about spelling stuff out. One thing I like that he said was it, quote, resists being rationally pulled apart as to defining what exactly it is and how to respond to it, which is cool, you know? It does, the virus does a different thing to each person. It's not like you can say, I know how to defeat this, I would do it this way if I were them. Like, it's just totally different, totally random, and that aspect of it really works for me. You know, it's not necessarily a realistic portrayal of body horror, but it is an exciting portrayal of it.
Oh, yes. It's similar to so many of my favorite horror films. It takes different moments that I remember from, you know, The Thing or Street Trash or, you know, and
yeah, the stuff
like,
is huge in here, yeah.
Yep, Scanners. I mean,
of course. Absolutely. Yeah, lots of pieces of really great stuff in here. And he said of realism or naturalism that it's, quote, only one option of how you can look at these strange, granular, floating, abstract, psychophotographic, ghostly images of people on a screen. In essence, they're highly iconic and hieroglyphic anyway, just by their photographic status, despite their fleshy appearances. And I do find that to be pretty interesting. He talks later on about one of the actors being very much like the embodiment of a cop. You know, Phillip says, it goes back to this artificial logic of the whole film. Why have a cop in the film who's really only a plot device and try to pretend that somehow the person's a character? Why not just go straight to an iconic instance of copness? So that's why they got Gerard Kennedy as Detective Sam Phillip, 301 episodes of Section 4 from the 70s. He had also been notable in Homicide. So they said, when people look at him, they see a cop. So if we put him in the movie, we'll just skip right past all of the character creation that it takes. And they say, there's a cop.
I mean, that's amazing. And it's a genius idea because he's hammering home this idea of, you know, these like soap opera TV, you know, for the masses, you know, and bringing them into his world is such a cool idea.
Absolutely. And it does make the tone wind up being pretty interesting because even though it is a little silly, it doesn't wear the camp on its sleeve. You know, it's a send-up of the suburbs, but it maintains a low-key flatness that more represents being there as opposed to just directly making fun of it. Phillip mentioned being frustrated by characterizations of the suburbs on TV since they didn't depict the areas he was familiar with in northern and western Australia, which he compared to being essentially like the town Nowhere in this, that there was just nothing going on, and then you'd have, your four little plot developments that were surrounded by absolutely nothing as well. So, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't take you to any other places in the city. I mean, you're just kind of, you know, in the farm location, and then when you're in Pebbles Court, you know, you don't really see anything else around there. I mean, where are the restaurants? You see a gas station, but that's about it. You're really zoned in.
Absolutely. And that insistence on playing it straight is something that I've mentioned enjoying before. It's definitely true here. As you mentioned, they have a lot of character actors from TV dramas in the cast. They did say they occasionally had to work to get someone to stop treating it as a farce and say, no winking, just throw yourself in. I really like that. I also find it kind of interesting that they specifically mentioned that there were no refusals by the actors that they approached. They were all excited to be in a movie like this, not only out of enjoyment, but with how regimented the industry was. They found it to be a really great opportunity with lots of weird characters to shake up their images. I feel like that's a really good attitude going into this, and it really helps and shows.
Yeah, for me, that's remarkable to hear and inspiring as a filmmaker who makes low budget films, there's always going to be that idea, right, that it's going to be so hard to get a yes from people. And I've heard some crazy stories of people just emailing celebrities and asking, and they don't have a feature film, under their belt, and the celebrities say yes. People in Hollywood want to try something different, and so in a way, this really did work out well just by being himself, and following his gut. No pun intended.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I already mentioned Gerard Kennedy as Detective Sam Phillips. Ian Smith is Dr. Carrera. Unlike Gerard Kennedy in his mere 301 episodes of Section 4, Ian Smith was in over 1,700 episodes of a soap opera called Neighbors that started in 1985 and is still running today.
Whoa. You gotta check that show out.
God bless you, Ian Smith, holding it down over there. They also bring on Bob McCarran to do the special effects and makeup. The guy is a low-key icon with the work for the Mad Max series, The Matrix, Dead Alive. He designed the titular Razorback, and of course, Body Melt is a damn showcase.
Yeah, that was really interesting to look at his body of work and hear how he showed up to set in a professional doctor's outfit. One of the producers was saying, and because when I Googled him, because I Google everything, it said he's a doctor too. It was like doctor and special effects, and he really does look like a doctor. And so it was an interesting film because there was a lot of, obviously, like medical related special effects, like different, even down to the, spoiler alert, like the part of the inside of the donkey that they pull out was apparently like accurate.
Yeah, it really does make it that much more visceral in a way that you don't even necessarily know you're feeling the difference of it looking realistic or not until it's happening. Brophy said something pretty interesting. He said, "What I'm after, and what I've asked Bob McCarran to set out to achieve, is for the audience to feel like it's their own body on screen. Mm-hmm. That's why, although we didn't really go for realism, we also didn't really go for a totally over-the-top, theatrical, fake, highly stylized approach either. The bottom line was always the question of how someone in the audience was going to respond to an image of a body doing something. And that was the center, the focus of every transformation scene. Not how realistic it looks or how gross it is, but how an audience member is going to feel while they're watching it." And I think that emphasis on the audience reaction is so key.
Yeah, because I was extremely grossed out. There were some certain scenes that I was not looking forward to watch again, and some that I was really enjoying watching. It is interesting what our eyes do, and what they like and don't.
Yeah, even in the special features, there's this one moment where McCarran is like showing off this corpse that he made, and he shows like, and this is sausage casing with gelatin in it, and he like just whips out an intestine from the body. You're like, oh, that's fucking gross, dude. Yeah.
I don't know if Vinegar Syndrome's still releasing these DVDs. They really should, because that is an amazing scene. He's standing there next to the body and explaining. I mean, it's really impressive, and he's really proud of his work. And what I thought was really cool too about that was he mentioned how, because the budget was pretty decent for this type of film, which is amazing that the Australian government, funded this film.
Right.
So cool. But they had, a decent amount of budget. So he was saying that this cadaver was made, as if like he were working on a Matrix or some, regular size Hollywood film. They had the means to make pretty like industry standard special effects, practical effects.
It was really awesome that he was so proud of it. I felt proud of him when he was like, look at how great this thing is. He said it was a $26,000 Skinflex corpse. It took 38 hours just to punch in the hairs, almost 11 weeks of work total. And I found that he was really like complimentary of Phillip, because he gave them not just the budget, but also like the leash to make it as perfect as possible and to really put their self into it in the way that you said that Phillip was doing as well. I think that that's really spot on, where because he's an artist, he also wants people to be able to do their art for the movie as well, whatever that may be.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a cool perspective for sure.
And I also really like that he talks about how there's so many more shots than a usual low-budget horror film. He said there's about 400 shots in this movie, which is about twice the usual. And for, certainly $1.65 million is nothing to sneeze at for a horror movie, but it's still not a ton, especially when you're putting so many shots into the movie. But having so much jumping around, flipping back and forth between people, it just makes it feel so frenetic, and it makes it feel so alive in a way that is, I think, part of what he's going for. Yeah,
and the film was only, 86 minutes long, the running time? It's not a long film by any means.
Right. So they film it in 1992. They wrap post-production in 1993, according to Phillip's own very well-organized and helpful website. Thank you, Phillip.
Yeah, that website's great. I've been looking at it for years, and it has some of his music on it, too, or some links, I think, to his music, which is so sick.
Yeah, really helpful. High-res scans of, every cover of the movie, the press kits, really great stuff. And the website also had a very useful list of screenings, because I did see that it's listed as a 1993 release date basically everywhere, although that seemed to be just the festival premieres. The actual Australian theatrical run, although fairly limited to just Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Sydney, wasn't until 1994. And a big part of that, he said, was the lack of industry infrastructure in Australia. And I thought that this was really interesting because he compared it to Saw's premiere at TIFF.
Yes.
He said Body Melt had queues to get in. Cues. I'm just using his word. Lines is how we would say it. The crowd totally got it, he said, and that they understood it was the antithesis of contemporary Australian cinema, which was seen as very contemplative and slow at the time. As we just said, this is incredibly manic. It's specifically seeking a constant acceleration in the movie. That's also part of what makes it very effective. But the difference is that North American film festivals have the infrastructure of distributors and producers in the audience listening to that reaction. And Australia didn't. So the movie just kind of vanished a little bit. They did also tell a funny story about the Melbourne Film Festival, where they invited the residents of Myers Court, whose home they used for Pebble Court, and he said they all went nuts when they saw the special thanks that they got in the credits.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
really funny
cute.
stuff. It is, yeah, I love that. And you know what? It doesn't take a lot, right? You just throw their names in the special thanks, boom.
Everyone wants to be in a movie. Everyone wants their house to be in a movie.
It did go on to home video. It did start to build this cult audience. And around 2004, Quentin Tarantino watched it, called a bunch of friends over and said, "Is this as good as I think it is?" He started talking about it in public venues, helped that cult following develop. And here we are now with it recognized as the best horror movie ever made.
Woo!
So let's get into the actual movie.
Yes.
First off, starts with Dumb Films Presents. Amazing credit just to jump off with.
Yeah.
And a promotional video plays to lead us in, with Regina Gygalis as Sean promoting Vimuville, a state-of-the-art health and leisure center where you can give your body the nourishment, energy, and sensational pleasure you owe it. Turn your annual holiday into an unforgettable revitalization of your well-being. The Vimuville building was actually a grain technology research facility. There was this very weird, non-sequitorially funny moment where they asked in the commentary, where was all the grain technology that day? What a weird phrase. Never heard that before. Never will again. But we cut to pulsing electronica, and Sean is one half of a nude couple luxuriously taking intravenous drugs in the soft UV blue glow of the tanning bed. What a powerful opening scene. Just in terms of visuals, it is a punch in the damn gut.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's so seductive, and the lighting is beautiful, and they're, perfectly sweaty or oiled. I'm not sure, but there's something I'm just so drawn to those shots, that setup, and it really kind of doesn't give you. It's not similar to how the rest of the film is, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And she sneakily swaps out the normal drugs that they're taking for something that glows like the damn reanimator agent. and grinning like the Cheshire Cat, injects his veins, which pulse ominously before we cut to the title card.
Which is, I mean, the title card.
Also amazing. Really cool, kind of like Primus or Freaked-esque. It has this cool, like, I wouldn't even call it like claymation, but it has like that sort of weird feeling to it.
Yeah, it's really one of a kind.
Yeah. Again, almost feels alive in a way that...
Right. Like the veins, like his pulsating veins, and then we get to the pulsating text.
That's right. So Sean calls an unseen conspirator, and she says she fixed this guy named Ryan. Apparently a chemist who'd grown a conscience about their experimentation on the unaware denizens of Pebbles Court, a neighborhood in Holmesville. He won't get far, though, she promises.
I love this whole setup.
It's so, like, because it started as the anthology movie, the, like, lackadaisical effort that's put into the framework, I love. Like, the fact that they're like, all right, this guy had a change of heart, no reasoning why, we're going after him. It's like, great, he takes us there.
Yeah, those scientists who just get a moral conscience, you know.
That's right. He does live long enough to check out who they're going after, though, from a virtual tour of Pebble Court itself. They said the opening graphics maybe don't hold up as compared to modern graphics, but importantly, they do hold up as interesting, which I thought is a perfect summation of why this is still compelling.
Yes, these graphics are the type of graphics that I look for in films. You know, it's exciting, and even the opening shot of her, you know, speaking about the facility and everything is just, you know, probably shot on tape or, you know, I texture, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So this court includes the Noble family, Cheryl and Brian Rand, Sal Cicerone and Gino Argento. You have to imagine Argento's little nod to the maestro himself there. And Target One, Paul Matthews, who is $5 million in debt. That's a lot of debt, Paul Matthews.
I didn't catch that. Which one is Paul Matthews?
That's our first guy who like, he has the hallucinations of the lady and has the rib ripped out.
The best hallucinations. Okay, yeah. That's why he's struggling. Okay.
That's right. So Ryan leaves to warn Paul and burns his ID on the way out. Really cool shot of foreshadowing when his face starts to bubble and ooze from the plastic melting.
Yeah, I wondered about that shot, if that just happened naturally or if they did some, you know, After Effects or if it was some sort of video art that they added in.
It does. It's like almost too perfect.
Yeah.
It bubbles over his face first. You're like, ooh, that's perfect.
Yeah, right over the eye.
Now, the next morning, the camera ominously gives us the same tour, ominous music warning us about this manicured to death suburban roundabout, and the vitamin pills that Paul removes from his mailbox. A sample courtesy of Vimuville. How considerate.
Not Vimeo. I kept thinking it was Vimeo. Vimeoville. I was like, but no,
Vimuville. So I actually paused it on a moment where they reveal what it stands for, which I will recount later when it actually comes up. So that's a fun tease for everybody. Get to learn what Vimuville stands for. But Paul is still making his journey to Holmesville. He stops at a gas station looking worse for wear, we'll say. He slams a bottle of pills that heads in and asks for detergent, which he slams back as well, dropping his credit card on the counter mid-gurgle of blood and vomit, which really cracked my ass up.
The gurgles. They probably did that in post.
Yeah. Ugh. Nasty stuff. And I also love this cashier being like, fucking pill poppers, why can't you get some fucking sleep? This guy's got something else going on, my friend.
Yeah, he's like, wants to eat detergent and there like cuts on his throat, you know?
Mm-hmm. Paul tears out of there. He attracts the attention of a cop car that hilariously pulls out the wrong way and has to do a 180 to actually chase him. Really like a brief moment that is never like touched on or played for laughs, but it really got me.
Yeah, and did you catch I love the three older women power walking as he pulls out of the gas station.
They're having a great time.
Yeah, the little details in this film really make it.
That's right. And the huge wounds in his neck get sprayed with the remaining detergent as he tries to hold on, recording notes about the process. First phase is hallucinatory, second phase is glandular, Third phase is groan. Oh God.
That line is iconic.
Oh, it's so good. And he makes it to Pebble Court just in time to lose control, hitting a parked van, launching himself through the windshield. Really fun moment in the behind-the-scenes footage where they showed this getting filmed, the initial car crash, and then separately sending the guy through the windshield, and how the sugar glass or whatever basically completely shattered at the slightest impact so he could go through cleanly. It's cool stuff, and again, really makes you appreciate the importance of the editing and having all those various shot setups.
Yeah. It was cool to see how they did this on that budget as well, you know, and every detail, like you're saying.
Yeah, one of the really cool moments that I saw was in order to not have to, because you get one chance at it basically once you have this crash happening. So what they did first was they had the car reverse from it really fast so that they could flip that footage later if they needed a secondary version of it. And I was just like, that's so smart.
That's genius. That I noticed in a shot later on in the film with slime, I felt as though they reversed it as well because it was the slime like trickling up a sink, and I was like, that's reverse. And that's what Hitchcock did in the shower scene for the stabbing moments. A lot of those stabbing shots were actually
the lifting
reversed.
Up, right? Yeah.
Yes, genius move.
It's really great stuff. And as he lies on the ground, we see something strange. The wounds in his neck seem to have some kind of long phalangeed creature attempting to crawl out, reaching up his nostrils and mouth. Really nasty, some cool like body canal shots, but it retreats back down his throat when the police approach.
Yeah. Those were particularly gross for me to see. The little skinny tentacle.
Yeah, definitely gross. And Detective Sam arrives on the scene. Looks a lot like the Australian George C. Scott, speaking of the Changeling. He's also got a real Exorcist 3 vibe as someone asks him, is that guy dead? And he shoots back, have a guess.
Yeah, the detectives are really interesting characters. They got a lot of funny lines.
Yeah, that's right. His partner is Jono, played by Andrew Daddo, as the sort of guy who's seen Lethal Weapon a few too many times. Apparently the Daddos were basically the Baldwins of Australia, and correct me if I'm wrong out there, Australian listeners, but the impression that I got from the commentary was that Andrew is the Stephen Baldwin.
Wow. Yeah, they seem to really drill in the, like, his character. He's a smart, what were they saying? He's the smart ass or something?
Yeah.
He's the smart ass one, and I did send this film to someone who's Australian, and yeah, their only commentary that they were really pushing was, oh, it's Andrew Daddo's in it. And I was like, what? Who? Which character? And then I thought maybe it was one of the main, one of the characters that gets melted, but no, it was the detective. And I was just like, really? Okay, so he must be an icon there.
Yeah, there we go. He is good. I mean, he is good in this. He said he basically just played himself. I think that comes across, he feels very natural.
Yeah.
But they find the tape about the effects, either bad poetry or a clue, or both, which they listen to as Sal and Gino excuse themselves from the questioning.
Yeah, the detectives, it's so comical because they're really not interested in questioning anyone in Pebble's court.
That's right.
They're really not interested in that, and they're almost very confused about what's going on until the bitter end. Then something clicks for them.
That's right. That's all it takes is that one thing. But these two boys claim to be going opal mining, although they're actually on their way to the health farm. Gino shows a Polaroid of himself being seduced by Sean, who solicited them to come out for paid sperm donations. Not the smartest lads, these boys.
No. And I wonder how old they're supposed to be, because I guess they're living at home.
Yeah, but they have, different parent names.
Right.
So I think that they maybe just got out of college or something. That's my vibe that I'm getting from these guys.
Okay, college. Okay.
Yeah. And Paul heads to the airport. He watches the people sitting around him and hallucinates someone staring at him. Too many drugs, some punks chuckle with irony.
Yeah. He doesn't look so bad, I think, there.
Yeah, he's just sweating nervously.
Yeah.
It's okay, all things considered. But he gets a call from the person that he's picking up, and he's pissed that they no longer need a ride, but only told him once he's already there, which I get. That sounds very annoying.
Yeah. Vague, though. Very vague.
True. Paul hallucinates more at the airport bar over coffee. But what's fun and interesting is the question of how much more. There's an echo as a beat-up woman makes small talk with him. But then you ask yourself, is the echo the hallucination? Or are the wounds fake? Or is the woman there at all? And it's not until the end of the conversation where she bluntly asks for a place to stay that the camera sort of fights past his leaking point of view and shows us that he is in fact alone. This is definitely one of my favorite moments in the movie where we sort of don't even realize that we've been in his POV until that hallucination kicks in.
Yeah, there's something really special about this scene. I don't know if it's the way that they did her special effects makeup or this character. It's just, there's something really puzzling, but also that draws you into her. Like, you just like, what is her story? You know, who is this hallucination? And is she mutant? And it's very interesting.
Definitely. And speaking of mutant, with a broken windshield and lost as hell, Gino and Sal stop at a body shop deep in the boonies, where we meet the owner, Pud. Vincent Gill plays Pud, and what a fascinating guy. In the behind-the-scenes stuff, he reveals the backstory of his character, which is not in the movie, and boy, do I love it.
I know. I thought that was cute. That was very endearing to hear, you know, that I guess Brophy gave him something to work with.
It's funny that I so recently watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yes.
And the star of that, the guy who plays Bubba, very much a theatrical actor, got very much the similar vibe from Vincent Gill here in terms of, like, you know, it would be very easy for someone to be like, there's nothing to this guy. It's just a shallow character. What the fuck am I doing here? Who gives a shit? But for them to not only be willing to look deeper into the character, but then to risk looking ridiculous on behind-the-scenes stuff and be like, here's what I'm bringing to this character in order to give him some depth. I really just got to applaud it.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed really into working on this project, and you could tell it was coming from a real place.
Yeah.
He wanted to be there.
That's right. So to provide some of this backstory, since it's not in the movie, Pud had been working on germ warfare for the military when he and his partner discovered that in addition to destruction, it could also enhance. Pud wants to go for it, but his partner plays it by the book. This much is in there, but what we don't see is what follows. He compares the character to Jekyll and Hyde again for the second movie in a row, and this time the parallel is the initial pleasure that turns to instability. So after starting to mutate, Pud walks away into the desert, where he sat on a black rock at the crossroads of everywhere, and there the wind starts to howl like never before, storms, nature roaring. But after, he finds a double rainbow, and there he strips down, has sex with the throbbing earth, and says, I'm sorry, I didn't know, this is the best I have to offer, and suddenly the earth turns into a woman who cradles and rocks him and tells him it will be alright, and suddenly the Black Rock becomes the place we see as nowhere, and he has a mutant family in this his castle in the air, both a redemption and a self-imposed punishment.
Whoa.
Wow.
Whoa, I did not know that.
It's
and I'm
wild.
glad I do. I just want all these. It would be really interesting if someone who's obsessed with body melt just takes all of these different characters and just makes spin-off movies. I mean, you really could.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that because it comes from such a intense focus on adding that characterization, but also that vagueness of the loose narrative, where you could bring your own stuff to it, you can add pieces that aren't present in the movie, but still feel like the characters are distinct enough that it feels like it's tied to it still.
Yeah, and this world, this mutant world that Pud lives in, you know, to give some context for people who haven't seen the film, I mean, it is very Texas Chainsaw Massacre
definitely
energy over here with with a lot of stuffed animals.
That's right. Yeah. If you combine the gas station and the house and then the house had a bunch of stuffed animals and dolls nailed to posts instead of real bones, you'd have nowhere.
Yeah. And there's a beautiful stuffed animal through line throughout this like entire film. Shout out to, the production designer, art director, but there clearly was a thing for really cute stuffed animals, and they did that really well.
They nailed it. Pud jokes that they're in a 4-horse town called Nowhere, then laughs and says, just a little Outback humor. Then I laugh when Sal can't find it on the map, and Pud brusquely says, I suppose that's Big Smoke humor. And Sal, clearly not joking, but used to this, goes, yeah. Just a really great joke. Well executed all around. Pud also does have a big old tumor on his face, and he calls out his children. They ain't exactly prime cuts of beef themselves. Bab and Bronto, summoned by a pig call and seemingly from the Australian version of The Hills Have Eyes. One thing I really had to laugh at was that the subtitles on this disc are actually closed captions. So it indicates bad guys laugh when they all start laughing. And I went, well, I guess there's no twist to expect there. But out stomps another member of the family, Slab. She has no eyebrows, which are doing a lot of work to make this woman look, bluntly, pretty Neanderthalic. But Sal returns her bedroom eyes. And we wonder what's going to happen as we cut away. And, again, this looseness of the story where they do use it to kind of, create some of that dramatic tension where you're like, well, now I want to know what the hell's going on with Sal here.
And then in some way it's like you can't even really comprehend what could go on, because why would Sal be in, not to say anything bad about this character, but what is going on in Sal's head? And there's a lot of those moments where, they really make you wonder in this film.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, I also do think that what's interesting is that, I'll hold on to this. I'll hold on to this until we break down the name of Vimuville.
Okay.
Another tease for that out there.
The anticipation is killing me. I can't wait.
Paul wakes up from a nap at work. He's sweating profusely. His secretary says some guy from the CIB is looking for him, which I shockingly did not look this up. I assume it's Central Intelligence Bureau, but who knows?
Because of the money situation, potentially.
Right.
Okay.
He heads home, hoping to recover, and is startled to discover the woman lingering there in a mirror like Dan Griffin Dunn in American Werewolf. She's hanging out there. She startles him in the mirror. Really great moment. And when he goes to bed, he hallucinates her again, although this time she is unwound and in a nice outfit, and she gets atop him, rubbing his stomach sensually, until suddenly she's digging in, and he wakes up with a start.
Yeah, and she's really something. Mm-hmm. The hallucinations are shot really cool, I remember.
Yeah.
Really digging that.
Definitely, yeah. It will feel very obvious for me to be like, oh, they feel very dreamlike. But they do a great job at capturing that.
Yeah.
Back at the body shop, Pud has a flash of recognition when Gino says he's from a dead-end housing estate near Holmesville, but he plays it cool. Bab and Bronto show off their kanga skills, bellowing to draw a kangaroo's attention, then pegging it in the head with a rock so hard that it just hilariously falls over dead. Yeah.
This scene, controversial for body melt heads out there. This storyline is my least favorite. If I had to pick a least favorite, it would be the mutant family.
Sure. Hey, I get it, but I do find that to be pretty interesting. I don't know if I have nailed down which one is my least favorite. Maybe I'll come back to that at the end.
Yes, I'm curious.
They did have a real kangaroo at one point, brought down by hippies with assurances that it was tame and it would do whatever they want, and instead it promptly bolted and was never seen again. So the production designer, Maria Kozik, who is great, by the way, had to run home. She made a stuffed kangaroo, absolutely kills it.
Yeah, the way that they describe that, it's like she just ran home and made a kangaroo and came back, like as if they were just, had lunch and she had a kangaroo there within an hour. I was curious about that too. I'm like, really though? Really?
Yeah. She's just like, thank God this kangaroo I've been saving all these years is finally coming in handy.
I know. And then
I made this, everyone.
Yeah. And then in the behind the scenes footage, I saw the special effects artist, like they had like a couple different kangaroos. It looked like kind of like figuring out which fake kangaroo we should use,
Yeah, it is wild.
And it was funny why he used the kangaroo too. I mean, he was saying like he kind of wanted to use this like super cliche Australian symbol,
Right.
I guess he was saying like it's maybe not as common as someone who doesn't live in Australia would think, and just like we have to use this because it's just what people would expect of us.
Exactly. Bab digs in with a knife. He pulls the adrenaline gland out of its neck and he splits it with his brother, screaming "Psycho Jelly." This is an honestly disgusting looking moment on the Blu-ray. I did let out an involuntary, ugh, God.
Yeah. And it sounds gross too.
They high off this adrenaline, drive a truck around in circles, while Sal slips away with Slab to make out in a hay bale. And after the rush wears off, Gino is led into a secret hallway. This hallway is such an interesting set, absolutely covered in bric-a-brac. Looks like a damn Chili's threw up in there.
This hallway just reminds me of so many great horror films that it's just like it's like home. When we go inside the house, you're just like the comfort of a really horrifying house filled with knickknacks and art and punk stuff and whatever.
That's right. Yeah, it is comforting in an odd way. And among the clutter is an interesting photo. I'm seeing double 4 Puds. But it's actually Pud and his partner working together at, quote, some kind of germ factory. Vimuville Chemicals, as we see in the photo.
Is that Dr. Carrera?
It certainly is.
Is it Carrera? That name.
It certainly is. They're brought back to the present by some screams, because after agreeing to a love bite, which is a hickey for those who are not familiar, Sal has just lost a huge chunk out of his neck.
Don't like that scene.
It gets worse, because as Bab says it was a scream of lust and rushes off, Gino gets to explore a bit. We cut over to Slab, who is shoving a pole up Sal's ass and goes back to devouring his neck. I think it's so funny that not only is it like her leaping onto his neck and devouring him, but then also when the Bab runs out snitching to Pud, and she like emerges bashfully with like evidence all over her face.
Yes.
She's got blood all over her. It's so funny.
Yeah, that whole scene.
Yeah, just great stuff. But furious, Pud punches her and says they have no choice. Find the other one.
And to keep it in the family.
That's right. Also gross.
Made me wonder. Also made me wonder moment.
Gino here hears this. He leaves in a hurry. He makes a break for the truck that they did donuts in. The only problem is, as Pud demonstrates after walking calmly over, is that the wheel is not actually attached to any steering. So he's going nowhere.
So scary. Worst nightmare.
It sucks. Also, again, I had to laugh at the closed captioning. It goes, "Evil family, laughs and whoops." I said, they sure are.
Yeah, they had a cackle. They had quite the cackle with those teeth, with those prosthetic teeth. Oh my gosh.
That's right. The detective and Jono arrive at the health clinic to question Sean about the identity of the victim, dead from a car crash, supposedly, and she denies any knowledge, so they're stymied. And they return back to the police station to check in on the autopsy. We get another classic entry in the weird mortician canon here with Willie. Very, very fun character. He says that this guy was basically eaten away from the inside. It would have to be some new and seriously experimental drugs. But they also seem to be cognition enhancers that make him super healthy. I love this, classic Kuleshov effect as we go into Paul making himself another glass of the vitamin mix after they've been discussing this. It really lets you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, the cuts to Paul were really special in this film. They were just done so well, and like the fizzing of the drug and the different colors, and I enjoyed the shots with Paul a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And checking his mailbox, he hallucinates the woman again, who opens up a surgical kit holding ribs of different sizes. She says, "This was my quest, 13 male ribs. I chose you at the airport, becoming your deepest fears and darkest fantasy. There are many women in the world like me, and many men in the world like you, and we are all inside your mind. As she coaxes out his rib. It's nasty. That's a nasty effect.
It was one of those effects where I was like, look away, I can't look away. I mean, the way that it comes out of his body, it feels real to me, like kind of the way that you were like drawn to like pimple popping videos or something. It has that effect on you.
Yeah.
But with a rib.
Yeah, exactly. The ultimate pimple, everyone is saying.
Yeah, we have so many of them, they're just popping out, But
That's right.
Also, is that a myth? Is some sort of myth or the rib? I don't know. I feel like there's definitely has to be some sort of...
There's like the Bible stuff. There's like a
Yes.
Bible element.
Bible element.
Yeah. I also do love, I've talked about it before, how the story is, the looseness facilitates the camera sort of just sliding over at a pregnant couple, Brian and Cheryl, next door, watching out the window at the exercise dad being an exercise dad. It really reminds me almost of like Slacker. And it does make it feel like Pebble Court itself is a main character. I know that is also cliche and hack to say that the setting is a main character, but it does, at least this element, help facilitate that feeling in terms of like, yeah, this is the through line between all these people, is like we keep coming back to Pebble Court, and the camera being able to slide around that way does make it feel at least a little less, just tacked on.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good point. I mean, yeah, we couldn't have this film without Pebbles Court and the wonderful people of Pebbles Court letting him use their entire cul-de-sac to shoot this film.
That's right. And Cheryl has been having troubling dreams since moving to Pebble Court, and her obstetrician, Dr. Carrera, reassures her, suggesting it's normal and the baby's fault, leaching her protein at night. The ultimate parasite, as he describes children. Quite the bedside manner this guy has.
Oh my gosh. This is my favorite. From the beginning, this has been my favorite storyline.
They are
pregnant
fun.
Woman. I love her. What would you call them? Kills or like melts? Her melt is my favorite.
I like melts. Yeah,
her melt
good.
is my favorite.
It's very, very good for sure. And after she leaves, the truth comes out. Carrera calls Sean and reveals that they've been dosing her by saying, crap, we need to decrease the dosage. It's affecting her too much. There's a real unpredictability issue. After the initial underreaction from Ryan, and now Cheryl's overreaction, and the Italian kids haven't turned up at all. So while Sean is reluctant to delay, thanks to a big distribution contract, the doctor is more concerned about the cops. Really incredible line here. He says, fuck the chain store. What about the cops?
Yeah. And so I was going to say, is he getting a moral conscience too? But no, not really. He's just worried about getting arrested, I guess.
Yeah, he's a little scaredy boy.
Yeah.
He says this could be worse than thalidomide. And I wasn't personally aware of this event, but the use of thalidomide in 46 countries by women who were pregnant or who subsequently became pregnant resulted in, quote, the biggest anthropogenic medical disaster ever, with more than 10,000 children born with a range of severe deformities. So certainly sounds intense and not something that Carrera wants to get pinned with here.
Right. Or not something that is not widely known. So it must have been, covered up a lot, because I didn't know about that either.
Yeah. And corporate interests win out as usual. Sean tells her buff lackey to ship the tablets tonight, way ahead of schedule. Dr. Carrera receives another call.
She's evil. Sean is the worst.
She's evil, but she's evil in such a, deliciously evil way that it really works in terms of, you're just yeah, that's just who she is. She's the evil lady.
Yeah, she means business. She's a businesswoman,
That's right.
She has stuff to sell.
Right. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
And that she is.
That's right. So Dr. Carrera receives another call, this time from Pud. He says, it seems like we're in business again, crackers. Well, you know where to find me, and hangs up while Dr. Crackers looks at a copy of the photo we saw earlier. He's the other man.
Oh my gosh. I love it. And who said there wasn't like character development and, storylines?
A fool said that. Cheryl is startled that evening by Paul, who's looking worse for wear. He's got snot coming from each orifice, but he's gone as soon as he appears, so she shrugs it off, more concerned with her own tossing and turning and the strange noises coming from her stomach. There's a really nice moment on the TV. There's a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, which, of course, the gestating and changing organism in her own body is certainly representative there.
Yeah, I love the TV elements in this film. There's a couple where he really uses the television and the video footage on it. I don't think it's just, slapped on there. I think it's all definitely really intentional and pieces of art that he himself had made. And one of the video works he's actually in, him and
That's right.
the woman, I believe, who did the music to the film.
Yeah, it's quite the scene. I'm sure it'll come up when it comes up.
Yes.
But yeah, it is definitely intentional. I think you're spot on with that, in that the same way that everything is, where even though he's not necessarily interested in the details of the story and spelling everything out, I think it's clear that he is putting a lot of attention into the details that do matter to him, and that is what's on screen.
Yeah.
Now, the following day, Cheryl sees the Noble family off to start their vacation at the health club, and you go, of course, this makes perfect sense. We've seen that the runner dad is a runner dad, so this all makes sense.
He's amazing.
Her coffee initiates an awful reaction, though. A bloody pulsing mass, and her placenta just drops right out, and she is shook when her doctor calls. After all, it's a month early. I'll be right there, he says, but first calls Brian to lure him to his home as well. Nothing to worry about, though, he says. How about that?
A setup.
That's right. She looks back and sees that it's gone, just bloody streaks on the floor, which is not what you want to see when you're looking for your placenta.
No. And then cue the amazing techno music. While she looks for it.
And her body goes full alien mode, bulging and stretching stomach as something tries to get out. She falls to her bed and grabs a huge knife that just happens to be there. It's like a fully gothic ceremonial knife.
I know. And I noticed it was there earlier too in a different scene. And I'm just curious about that. But
I don't know. But it's whatever it is, it's convenient. And she's about to stab her guts out with it.
Yeah, the props person on this film had really good taste, I have to say. And the wardrobe designer, too. I was clocking everyone's earrings the whole time I was watching it.
Hell yeah. Brian arrives. His cry stops her long enough for the thing to leap from her body once again and attach to his face, climbing down his throat. And her stomach rips open, steam billowing, flapping strips of flesh. It's wild and nasty stuff.
Yeah, and shout out to one of my favorite parts of this film, which made me fall in love with this film, is the little French clown toys' hair getting wind blown by the womb explosion. Is just so on brand for
That's a nice
everything
touch.
I'm looking for.
Yeah. The police are viewing it as a murder, with a sedate Brian sitting in the back of their cruiser. But as the detective questions Dr. Carrera about Paul, the symptoms listed on the tape, and any medications that Cheryl might be taking, the doctor gets visibly nervous that the medication will show up in the autopsy. And looking out the window, he also sees movement in Paul's house, and uses the opportunity to sneak over and try to clean things up with a lethal dose of the drugs. But he's surprised to find Paul is not quite himself, shall we say. I love, again, the music is thumping, you're feeling good going into it, but you do get little visual cues at first, like the dried blood and dirt around his collar from the back. And then when he turns around, oh mama. Eyes bulged out completely out of their socket, his lips torn open, blood, sweat, and mucus everywhere. Everything and anything that they could have done to this guy's face has been done, and it is so visceral and powerful, and it truly is shocking. It's great stuff.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the more glorious, in your face melts for sure. And he had this reptilian nature to him in a way. There was something like slithery and yeah, like snake-like to his transformation. And even the way that they shot Dr. Carrera walking into that room was like Hannibal Lecter-esque. It was really creepy, a creepy moment for both of them.
Definitely snake-like. He like hisses at him and grabs at the doctor's face. But the doctor manages to stick him with the needle at the last second. Back at the compound, the Noble family is arriving, greeted by an insane table of food. So much stuff that shouldn't just be sitting there, including fully prepared hamburgers, cold cuts, and ice cream, question mark? It looked kind of like cupcakes in a waffle cone, but that might just be the result of more fidelity than they expected on whatever they faked it with. But it is wild stuff.
Yeah, that setup is pretty remarkable.
And they're also presented with Mitra, a young and hot personal assistant who is, quote, yours for the asking, which makes the dad swallow nervously. She reveals that the food contains the same mega nutritional value. It's been modified so kids and adults alike can enjoy what they want nutritiously. I do think, I was joking before. I think that this probably is why it's acceptable for it to be out and about, despite being this crazy stuff, because it's so genetically modified. I also think that this is part of what Phillip is talking about in terms of just the idea of everything being nutritious and like not having to experience the actual decision making and like sensuality of like decadence, right? If everything is just the same exact thing, then you never get to experience the luxuriousness of going above and beyond, of doing something maybe you shouldn't do, of feeling a little bad, but being like, fuck it, I'm gonna eat this piece of cake or whatever. Like, all of that goes out the window, and it sort of minimizes the human experience by compressing the spectrum of what you can do.
Yeah, and this facade too, this facade that we just so easily buy into, and it looks like a cupcake, but it's actually really healthy for you in this, and it's like, all right, I'll buy whatever you're selling. It says health spa outside, so it says healthy, so it must be okay.
Yeah, and at one point the assistant says like beneficial lying or something like that, and the mom is just like, oh, of course, and like you go, this is happening to you too, you fool.
And everyone's buying into it, and I'm sure that was like part of a time when all these new health crazes and stuff were taking over and becoming super trendy, and it was like people were just like in masses just blindly saying sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely. Dad is embarrassed to have some mucus dripping out of his nose at dinner and rushes off. But when some sneezes into the sink, the mucus moves up the slope, as we mentioned earlier. What a great moment. It's not too over the top, like he said. It makes you squirmy in your seat, because instead of just being like, whoa, look at it go, you go, oh, it's climbing up the hill. Like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah,
for some reason, his melt story with the snot is so gross to me. It seems almost like it could be real, Sure. I believe it. I buy it. Yeah.
Their children have a funny exchange later that day. The brother is a brat, and I love the daughter's insult of "fuck off, wiener dick."
Yeah, and he's like, he accuses her of having PMT. Yeah. I don't know if that's something else, but maybe I was assuming he meant like PMS or something.
I also assumed that. Didn't feel like necessarily Googling it, but I got that from the context. He says he's going to sleep outside that night and goes to rollerblade until then. The daughter gets a dirty look from mom when she says, "Hope you break your neck," as he leaves. And I truly just started rubbing my hands like, oh, that's some Final Destination level on the nose foreshadowing.
Yeah. Something's about to happen because the way also too that he reads the line of like, I'm gonna go sleep under the stars, or he says something like that to his sister, and you're just like, I bet you are, kid. I bet you are. Yeah.
And indeed, he does go out to an admittedly radical half-pipe. He has a huge, goofy, exploding face painted on it, which is a nice touch for body melt. And this kid absolutely biffs it. He does a backflip with more cuts than the famous scene from Taken with Liam Neeson hopping the fence, and, quote, Bran thuds wetly against a ramp, as the captions put it.
I love this scene.
Oh, yeah, it's really intense. I love, too, that it's not just, like, immediate. That he goes out, he does a few actual effective, like, rollerblade stunts, and then you're like, come on, give me the fall. They did say that it was pouring rain during this scene, and it made it a hell day to shoot, which I can definitely imagine. And it's way later that evening. The parents are like, yes, he's camping outside tonight. But it cuts over to reveal the damage. It is honestly brutal. His teeth have torn through his lips. His nose is flattened. His eye socket is crushed and the eye is out. He's gurgling. It is really nasty stuff.
I know. I mean, controversial because he's like a dead child, but I mean, it is like it is a beautiful like piece of prosthetic work. I was really drawn to this scene, and also it was like reminiscent of They Live, like the characters in They Live. It just had a really interesting kind of skeleton, like, I don't know, death. Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, it feels like so often the skeleton is trying to, like, erupt from these corpses in a lot of these melts, it feels like.
Yeah.
And I love that about it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you caught this in the in the commentary, but the producer was talking to Phillip and was like, "Oh yeah, like how old was the kid?" And he's like he was 10, and the producer was like, "Oh no, like I mean like the stunt double or whatever," like, and he was like, "Yeah, he was 10." It was a child stunt double.
You gotta do it, right? Who else is gonna fit the height profile?
I was like, wow, things were a lot different. I've never heard of like a I mean, I don't know. I'm not well versed in stunt people, but I didn't know that there were children stunt people.
Wow. You learn something new every day.
Yeah. Australia's wild.
That's right. That I did know already, actually.
Yeah, they let a lot slide there.
The morning after, the police are at it again. Got a real gem for your Pebbles Court collection. Good line, I thought.
Ha ha ha, LOL. All these people are just melting and dying and...
Oh, plenty of time for puns.
Yeah.
The crime scene implicates Dr. Carrera via the label on his poison, and we also learn Paul managed to rip his ear off, which is funny, especially when we cut to Carrera in the car answering a phone and instinctually putting it incorrectly and painfully up to the wrong ear.
So good.
Distribution is going ahead full steam, and this is where we finally learn what Vimuville stands for.
Ooh.
Visceral muscular vitalization of latent libidinal energy. So this is literally health powered by being horny. Whoa. And it explains actually quite a bit of what happens in this movie. Because friggin' the Italian kids are both off being horny as well. It explains why he would hook up with Slab, despite her, probably not being conventionally attractive. Basically, the later moments of the bodyguard or buff employee, all of their melts, kind of align with being horny. It just really, like, when I paused on the computer to see what the hell this stood for, it, like, suddenly everything clicked into place for me.
Whoa. This is also very Shivers. Cronenberg's Shivers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, whoa, okay. Yeah, I mean, this is body horror, guys.
Right. Absolutely.
Welcome to body horror.
Sean inspects the Noble family's urinalysis. She says, well, first of all, it's an amazing chart where the little boy has a graphic of a smaller test tube, and it just completely overflows with piss. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, I guess he ate a lot of cupcakes at the opening night dinner. I don't know.
I guess so. She calls Carrera to gloat about the data, saying that they can push ahead with more tests, but the message that she leaves is overheard by the cops, who are looking for Carrera as well. They leave for the health clinic, where we cut back to as well, seeing these two muscle men. One is stealing more of the medicine. The other is in bed with the assistant, trying to convince her to have morning sex. She's more interested in breakfast. And again, the first watch, I totally missed that this was horny powered health. So I was just like, okay, I guess he's just a horny guy. And she's like, we've been having sex all night. I'm not trying to have sex with you in the morning. I need to go get breakfast. Like, handle yourself.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he does. He settles in to masturbate instead. His horny energy is too much, and his dick explodes. The director's testicles are indeed in this shot in the porno, and is in fact a scene from Salt, Saliva, Sperm, and Sweat after they couldn't get anybody else to do it. That was why he was in that scene in the movie. And funny enough, did get removed in the American version. They put in a softcore scene with no nudity instead, which feels very American.
So lame.
Yeah. Pud and Crackers Carrera finally meet up again. We learn that they were not only partners, but that Pud tested the chemicals on himself, hence the mutations. But as we said, it's not all negative, as we learn he does have advanced hearing. Not sure I would take that trade based on his face, but, you know.
Yeah, it's like one of those games. It's like, would you rather? You know, they're friends with you. Would you rather?
You get amazing hearing, but you look like the hills have eyes.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I'll decline this one.
Yeah.
I do love the shot of Carrera with the spiked stuffed animals behind him. It is this weird combination of, like, actual horror and, like, lighthearted goofery that I think really just nails down the tone of this movie.
It's a beautifully lit shot. I actually photographed, when I was watching, I took a photo of it with my phone because I just... He's positioned so perfectly in front of these stuffed animal totem poles.
Yeah.
And it's just like, the juxtaposition of him, like, distressed and bandaged with these, like, super adorable but dirty stuffed animals behind him, I thought was really nice.
Hell yeah. And it's here that we learn Pud is in fact behind the issues. When these two dissolved their partnership, clearly with bad blood, he stole an additive from the lab that was crucial to the chemical being safe. He says, I knew you'd try your master plan again, but without that, the body can't control its new power. It might even explode. Very fucking messy. All those people at Vimuville, you and your megabods. But little do they know that things are much worse than that, thanks to the shipping having begun. Oof. But Pud is fucking stoked. He and the boys hug, they sing Highway Star by Deep Purple.
Yeah, I don't know that song, but it seemed to be a favorite of a lot of people.
Yeah, it is a good song. It's from the 70s. Fun power rock kind of John.
Okay. That makes sense
stuff
for this film. There's definitely some, like, powerful, like, metal, techno metal-esque, melodies in the score.
Definitely. And we sort of Raimi vision back to Vimuville, and things are falling apart literally. Papa Noble is spewing green from his face, which he slips on and cracks his head on the bathroom counter. The remaining muscle man and the assistant are having sex, and he chokes her, initially in a look at this body, of course I have a power fetish kind of way, but he can't control himself, and he kills her before his own spine tears open, which they made sure in the commentary to point out how much it looked like a vulva, his spine did opening up that way. Yes.
We are at the point of the movie where it is just like boom, boom, boom in your face, like horror, body horror.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite melts, Sean is pounding pills, and eventually her entire head just melts down. Great makeup work on that face. It's the cover of the Blu-ray with reason. It just looks fantastic.
Yeah, you're like, is she really gonna do this right now? Like, smush her? Okay, it's happening. Her face is being smushed by her own hands. Okay.
That's right. I also love, now thinking about it, I would say initially my reaction would have been that Mr. Noble is my least favorite of the melts, but I love when it facilitates Mrs. Noble discovering the body in the bathroom, and it's like still wheezing and sucking air in past the mix of blood and foamy mucus that he's now entirely covered in, and this really saves his storyline for me.
It is the most like melted of the melt in that, like, you can't even see his features anymore. Like, there's no skeleton, there's no facial structure at all. It's just, you know, just like thick, colorful slime.
Yeah, looks great.
It does.
She and her daughter make a break for it, tearing ass off the compound while Carrera arrives and shoots at them. Meanwhile, the police are also arriving in a helicopter. It's like 15 minutes of movie that is just moving so quickly at the end here that I just love it. They say, in the commentary, they did talk about how they were aiming for, like, constant acceleration, and it does hit kind of like a moment where it becomes unstoppable, and you just, like, careen out of control almost, it feels like.
Yeah, and shout out the female camera operator on this project. Yeah. I'm sorry I don't have her name recorded, but I mean, the cinematography is gorgeous, but the way that the camera moves and the different shots, and that overhead shot of Dr. Carrera shooting everyone, and these fast-paced shots through Pebbles Court, and, you know, I mean, to see this film and to, you know, experience the movement with it, you really gotta give her props.
Yeah, Jenny Meaney is her name.
Okay,
and
nice.
She is great. Yeah.
Yes.
The two women make it to a doctor's office nearby and demand that he accompany them to Vimuville. That old chemical dump, he says. I haven't been there since the health commission closed it down. It's so funny. You gotta love it.
Yeah. Small town doctor's office, cute, charming doctor. You know, it's really lovely.
Yep. They realize it was in the food, but too late as Mrs. Noble's tongue swells up, flopping out of her face and choking her in the waiting room with 5 other patients waiting. God, it is nasty. But again, great closed captions of, quote, jazz music.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm sure he put some good music to that one.
Yep. They talked about there was an adverse reaction to typhoid/cholera vaccinations that caused Rod's tongue and lips to swell up like crazy. They recreated and expanded that for this movie. So nasty stuff to imagine basically happening for real.
I love it. I love that that's where the inspiration, you know, came from.
Yeah. The human body is real and disgusting.
Yeah.
Carrera muses over Sean's corpse. He says the human body, at best, a neglected engine running on cheap fuel. Way I see it, Doc, you're running on empty, the cop retorts. And he insists he was right and shows them by shooting a hole in his hand with no reaction before blowing his own head off rather than be taken in because he knows what's next. First of all, strong way to go out for this guy. He really takes it into his own hands.
Yeah.
Pun not intended, but it is intense. And the lab is shut down. They talked about spending hundreds of hours creating the massive pills that we see here by sitting there, pulling apart hundreds and hundreds of green pills and hundreds of gold pills, then spending time combining them into this color combination that he finds repulsive. And it was funny where he was, like, really coming out strong against green and gold.
Yeah.
To the point that the other people in the commentary were like, all right, relax a little bit.
Yeah, he definitely has, like, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, you know, but it is giving off, like, this, you know, chip on his shoulder against Australia, which, you know, I'm sure to make this film, it was definitely like a labor of love, and he was up against a lot of different things, especially because of, you know, the content. He had to work so hard to get funding for this project. But yeah, they really do give the like Australian, you know, like film commission and Australian films and all the Australian colors of the of flag a lot of grief, huh?
Yeah, I think one thing that really cemented that for me was in the special feature, like, behind the scenes documentary that he edited together. He really emphasized a portion of his own footage where he was talking about being constantly asked to explain why he should be allowed to make this movie. And, like, because it's not the kind of thing that they normally do, why they should fund this project. And the idea of, like, being, like, forced to explain your art in that way, what merit it has in terms of, like, why it should be allowed to exist. No doubt that's frustrating. And so I certainly understand why he might have that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, I get it. I get it is all I can say.
Yes.
But the police station looks like a crime scene as well. It is soaked in green slime because they took Brian in all that time ago for the murder of Cheryl, which you totally forget in the watching of this. He is fucking exploding, bro.
Yes. It's like a scene out of Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. It is really gross. The goo is forcing itself out of his cheeks. He dies with like a quiet, pained scream. It is intense.
Yeah, it's gross.
They talked about how awful it was shooting this final scene. It was government offices that were about to be torn down because they had asbestos in the walls and thus no AC anymore. Ooh. But it did mean that they could do whatever they wanted, including throw buckets of green slime all over.
And buckets there were.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Up comes the mortician, who is stoked about the new death certificates they're printing. Death by hypernatural causes. I can't help it. I love this fucking job, he says.
He's a great character.
Yeah, really fun. He's not in a ton, but he really makes a meal out of his scenes.
Yeah.
The detective's partner has been feeling queasy, understandable after what they've seen. He also develops a headache, and as they stop at the gas station, asks for some aspirin. Catch that speed freak yet? Asks the cashier. And as the camera pans around the store, we see a new product on display. The Vimuville vitamins that had been shipped out already! Credits. Wow.
You know? Body Melt 2.
That's right. We're wide open for it, baby.
We are here for it.
I do love this ending. And now, Christina, we've reached the part of the episode where we sum up why it's not just a good horror movie, but is, in fact, the best horror movie ever made. And I'm going to let you start.
All right. Body Melt is the best horror movie ever made because, first and foremost, it is fun. This is a fun watch with your friends, by yourself. It doesn't matter. And I love that this is one of those films that is a pass around film. It's a cult film, you know. It's the film that you want to own a VHS of and say, hey, yo, you want to borrow my VHS of Body Melt? You got to see this film. You can't find it anywhere. You know, thank God it's on Tubi now. You can watch it easily. But I think it just has that special quality because a lot of people don't know about it. And it was made by an artist. A lot of the things we talked about, the attention to detail, the textured score, which, you know, there's so much to talk about in this film, and we barely scratched the surface on the score that the director, Phillip Brophy, made, which was just, you know, I would listen to that in my car. You know, I wish they released the score to this film. You know, everything, it was just, even the sound design, it was the texture and just the set design, the costumes, everything was so tailored and special, and you could just tell that everyone working on this film had such a you know, like, unique talent, and they were willing to really make this vision that Phillip Brophy had for this film come true, you know. And I mean, it goes without saying, the special effects, you know, I am a huge fan of practical effects, and this film just like feels like all my desires that I would want to see in a film. You know, we got the practical effects, we got the good music, it's amusing, it takes risks. It's a risky film. It can maybe be seen as controversial. He pushes the boundaries, and I like that in a filmmaker. And that's what I'm looking for in my films, is these really adventurous and courageous filmmakers that are pushing boundaries, and they're making art for the people.
Hell yeah. And just to talk about that score again for a second, there's a whole second commentary that is just him talking about his design for the score and everything. So people who are really into the technical stuff, I can't recommend enough that they check that out.
Yes.
But as far as my thoughts on why this is the best horror movie ever made, first of all, number one, with a fucking bullet, does what it says on the tin. Bodies melt. And they melt gloriously. It is incredible. I think that the moments where the special effects guy is talking about the corpse is just demonstrative of the passion that they put into the special effects writ large. You can tell in every single melt that they put a ton of effort into it, and into saying exactly what was going to happen. It looks fantastic in every way. It's not too over the top in the other areas, which make it that much more impactful when suddenly someone's face is exploding, or they're covered in snot and phlegm, or they're eating shit on a half pipe. All of these moments that are so impactful because they let you sort of fall into the illusion of realism until these things happen. Then on top of that, I have always really loved mad scientist movies. I think that this is basically what a mad scientist movie looks like today. You know, pharmacology. It turns into body horror to be a mad scientist. And in that way, this is way ahead of its time. It deals with the horror of repulsion he talked about, and that thanks in part to a flat look of the setting, it's a very normal world. And instead of being invaded from the outside world, which you might expect based on the way it's set up to look, it's instead the chemicals warping them from the inside. And we see the body turn on us over and over again. Pieces of it come to life. They attack us. They choke us. They've had enough of our treatment of them. You know, we see at one point Jono is choking down a hamburger and drinking a shake or whatever. And the other detective says, you really ought to treat yourself better like that or whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm in touch with my body and like I'm a finely tuned machine or whatever. And I think that this movie is sort of like begging us to find a middle ground between like chemically altering ourselves in seeking this perfection that cannot be attained without tainting other aspects of ourselves, but also to be aware of what we're putting in ourselves, whether that is food or chemicals, you know, to treat yourself a little bit more cautiously because you don't know what you're doing to yourself, because the body, God, it can do so much that is disgusting. It really can.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that it is artistry. It really is incredible. I think that it's saying a lot while also being very entertaining, and that's such a fine line to ride. And for him to do that so effectively in under 90 minutes for $1.5 million, basically, under the auspices of a conservative Australian government and culture that are limiting the kind of things you can do, not really have enough distribution, this is really the movie that could. You know, it really chugged along and it found its place. And I think that that's really special. And I think that that makes it the best horror movie ever made.
Yes. Bravo.
Well, thank you. And Christina, this was super, super fun. I want to thank you for finally getting me to watch this movie, which I truly, truly enjoyed. Please tell people where they can find you online, where they can check out your work, all that stuff.
Yes. Well, you can definitely find my full body of work on Vimeo, not Vimu. But yeah, under my name, Christina Acevedo, you can find any of my work. And then my film right now that is just has little legs and is traveling all around the United States at the moment is called The Pointy Slippers, which is in fact a body horror. And it is also a commentary on what happens when we don't listen to our bodies and the pain and the messages our body's trying to tell us and what manifests out of that. And you can actually catch it here in Philadelphia on August 24th at the Women's Film Festival, and also at the Philadelphia Unnamed Film Festival, which is happening end of September. And if you're Trauma fans, shout out Trauma Dance 24 in New York City. And that's going to be early September. The film's going to be playing there as well. And you can find all that information on pointyslippers.com or my Instagram for the film, which is just Pointy Slippers.
Hell yeah. Well, I certainly encourage everyone to go check that out. I know I'm going to try and make it to the Unnamed Film Festival myself.
Rad.
So I'm really looking forward to that. But if you're in any of those other areas as well, New York Trauma Fest, that sounds sick as hell. Trauma Dance, rather.
I know, right?
Go check that out, people.
It's at a metal bar.
Come on, folks. Who says no to this?
Crazy people.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I'm excited to see the movie get bigger and bigger, much like Body Melt, I'm sure. As far as my plugs, people can find me on Instagram at Little Horror PHL for about another month or so. The show will be running. And then I don't know what'll happen to the Instagram. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll keep posting on there. Truly don't know. I'm just kind of blank mind as far as what comes next at the moment. And then the final Plutember will begin. I have my movie chosen already. We'll be talking about the movie Roar, which I'm really excited to be talking about. Truly find that movie very frightening because as a cat owner, I get hurt by them all the time and they're tiny. And the idea of just being around these untamed animals and trying to shoot a movie around them is really frightening. You just are constantly on the edge of your seat watching this thing. The tagline of the movie is, "No animals were harmed in the making of this movie. 74 cast and crew members were." And you just go, I believe it. That feels low, actually, based on what I'm watching here. So, yeah, definitely excited to talk about Roar. We'll see what Reegs and JP are cooking up, and that'll be the end of the show. Coming right up, but people in Philadelphia on October 20th can check out the quote-unquote secret live finale, where we'll be at Phillip talking about the movies that I'm surprised didn't get picked for the show, and I will be doing a little bit on each of those, probably having some guests come up to talk about them with me, so definitely look forward to that. And stop by. Keep an eye on the Instagram, I guess, for more information about that. So definitely, for that last month, check out the Instagram, Little Horror PHL. It's also letterboxed at that username. That's it. Thanks, everyone. Bye.